or talk to some of the people here who know more about it than I do. But I do know about coaching, and I do know about communication, and I do know that people in leadership roles these days, if they're not challenged by what's happening with artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, deep learning, all of those things, immersive technologies, they should be challenged. And if we as coaches don't feel challenged, I'm telling you just from the work that I've been doing recently with some leading people in this field, we need to feel challenged because there is changes happening at a dramatic rate. And I hope to give you some thoughts on that that'll help inform the discussions over the next couple of days and complement what other speakers are going to say. So my early training was an historian, so I always look at things from a historical point of view, which drives some of my friends mad because I want to look at the history of things rather than dealing with the now. Don't worry about the history, just deal with now. But isn't there an old saying, I think it's been misquoted many times, that those who ignore history are condemned to repeat the mistakes of the past, or words to that effect, and I think there's many examples of that in history. These are kind of three major developments in the last 3 centuries, if you allow me to go back 3 centuries. The 15th century, you've really got the invention of the steam engine, which had huge impact. And going on to this day, I think something like 85% of the world's population in that period was in agriculture. It's more like 5% now. You know, dramatic changes. Even in my lifetime, my grandfather milked his cows by hand and drove the milk to the road with a horse and cart. I mean, you know, this is. He died just before I came along, but there's been this dramatic change in all sorts of ways. That's not the steam engine. That's really the next phase, which is the combustion engine. And I was really delighted that this little gift works. And electricity. Think of the changes there that have happened with motor vehicles, with mass production, with the rise of consumer society. Totally transformed the world again. One of the footnotes to this is we've survived so far. And some people who are seeing kind of the end of time with artificial intelligence, I think I'm going to say should be a bit more optimistic. So then you go to the more recent era of the 50s and 60s in the last century, which with the transistors, which kind of powered everything. And I first remember when I was a school teacher and one of my science teacher colleagues talking about transistors, and I didn't quite understand how absolutely revolutionary they were going to be. So we come now to, and those are huge, what I call inflection points. I don't call it, somebody else called it that, but I've borrowed it. Transformational events, which then we look back on history and say, that's where these things started to change. That was, they call an inflection point. And we've got another one now, I believe, which is with what I call the new reality, because it's very hard to find a phrase that encompasses machine learning, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. If I pull my phone out and I say, "Okay, Google," I can ask Google a question. I mightn't get the right answer, you know. But we're learning. We're all learning. The machine's learning. We're learning. Siri, these devices people have in their home now. Alexa, the Google Home device, which can turn all the lights on or off. I mean, there are still some things going wrong. There was a story of a family that went away on a holiday and they left their Google Home on, or one of those devices, and it started a party at about 2 o'clock in the morning. So then the police came and broke the door down. The sound was driving the neighbours mad. So the technology needs to be worked on, as we discovered this morning. I want to just talk about virtual reality and mixed reality, and because some people don't quite see the difference, I'm just going to do a little explanation. This is virtual reality. I can't see you. I can see a world in here. I would have if I had my phone connected in there on the software. And if I had headphones on, I could hear music. And I could be lost in a little world of someone else's creation. That's virtual reality. It's kind of cut off from the world we see around us. Then I've got, and I was showing Pepe this morning, and I think he wants one. This is augmented reality. So this has got a high definition television a video camera in it. I could be videoing all of you. It's got, it's basically got a computer in here. It can be managed by hand signals. I'm still learning that. It can record the content. So imagine if I'm a coach and I'm having a session with somebody, and I can record the whole conversation. I can record their facial expressions, and that can feed me back. And once the artificial intelligence gets to work, it can give me a review of my coaching session and tell me I missed the time when they frowned because I was losing concentration. It can say you better sharpen up there next time. Don't let your mind wander when the client's trying to get your attention. So there are all sorts of ways in which... Now, you might say, I'm not going to have a coach who's got that stupid thing on his nose looking at me. You've got to be real. But some young people, I think, will be quite happy if they think this is helping me be a better coach. And the next version of this, which I couldn't get hold of, is like a pair of sunglasses, like a pair of regular glasses. These are safety glasses. And it's got all of this just in the little computers here on the wings. So I could be having a conversation which is immensely augmented by whatever I want to put in there. Let's say, I'm just making this up. Let's say 3 months ago, a client told me that there was an important event coming up next week, and I hadn't made a note of it. And I'm talking to him, and a little voice in my ear will say, by the way, your client's got the big birthday coming up next week, or a major decision to make. And I can say, so this big decision you've got next week, is the client going to like that or not? They're going to say, oh, he knows what's going on. So the technology helps me be a better coach, helps add value to the coaching process. And as I say, some people are not going to be happy with that, or they're not going to think that that's really good, but others are going to say, this coach I've got uses augmented reality to help me be better at what I'm doing. Does that make sense? Rather than saying, he wears these funny glasses. Might say that too. So now mixed reality is a kind of, there's a grey line between augmented reality and mixed reality. But there, mixed reality. Mixed reality is where you're combining these things, and I think the best way someone explained it to me was, when you're in mixed reality, you won't be quite sure whether this is real or created by an algorithm. And so people who are in... I see this more immediately applicable in training than in coaching as such, but there's even a bit of a grey line between those two, isn't there? So that I can see Sean saying, I could use that with my training, couldn't I? A lot of you around here are saying, maybe there's ways we can use augmented reality and mixed reality for a really enhanced training experience. And long distance, you could be a coach in Sri Lanka or KL, and you're coaching someone in Perth, where Belinda comes from, Australia, or someone in Norway, and you're creating that experience for them through the power of this technology. I think this is tremendously exciting. And to me, the kind of sky's the limit. So, is this the future in 10 years from time? We have another conference here in Colombo. Will there be funny little characters like this sitting at some of the tables? Hello, I'm a certified coach. I've passed Sean's test. I've flown here from Malaysia. Will that be what we're seeing? I don't know. It won't look like that probably. It'll look more like people sitting around here, and you'll be sitting next to someone and they'll make some twitchy movement, and you'll think, like those science fiction things, is this a creature from another planet, or is this another human being? So some of my technical friends think this is great. I had a conversation a couple of weeks back with a group of coaches, and they were people of, I suppose in their 50s maybe. And I was talking about this talk I was going to give, and they said, we'll never have any interest in that. We're perfectly happy with what we do. We don't need any of that. A week before that, I'd gone to a meeting of a local group where I live, which is a lot of technical people who work on artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I put this question to them, I'm going to be talking with these people in Sri Lanka about coaching and artificial intelligence and machine learning. What do you think about, from what you know about coaching, the future of coaching with that? And about half of these people, they're mostly younger, like 20s, 30s, and about half of that audience said, oh, you guys will be irrelevant, the robots will be able to do it all. Really? Yeah. And I said to one guy, you believe that? And he said, I believe it. That the coaches will the cyber coaches will have all the capacity that we have, not just for intelligence, but emotion. I said, I understand that that I can be coaching Stephen here, and I can say, and the computer can tell me that he's looking worried, and I say, Stephen, you're looking worried. Why are you looking worried? And he said, well, I've got this in it. So what have you done about that? So I can go through all this coaching stuff. I can understand that they've already got facial recognition technology with Apple, for instance, that can detect micro movements in your face and record that and then give you feedback on what people are feeling at that time by, as with all of these things, combining huge amounts of data. But so is there something missing? I don't know. We'll come to that. So there's be aware that, and the other thing, and I had a conversation yesterday, some research that's been done, not on a huge scale, I don't think, suggests that some people are quite happy to be talking with a robot. Some people are happier getting on the phone when they've got a complaint with telecommunications company or some other and having a robot take them through the answers than saying, are you listening to me? Don't give me that prepared script, that the human being is saying, because the human being's only got one set of answers. So some people actually like the idea of communicating with coaches. Some people get attached to robots. Some people get attached to robots, but that's a whole other story, emotionally attached. How about if the coach looked more like this, like humanoid? Now that's and I can hopefully give you a link later, because I think this is actually creepy, because she goes, and moves her head and smiles and looks down and so on. And that's a robot. And there are companies now providing these avatars that will provide various services to people. So they can do that very cheaply, can't they? Like you use cartoons in advertisements rather than having to pay actors. So some people might be happy with having a coach. They might be able to say, well, look, you can have one of these avatars to coach you for a third of what you, or a tenth of what you charge, that coach from IAC's charging you. That could be attractive for some people. So I'm saying, face it, the robots are already here. This is not future gazing. This is IBM Watson has a business coach. You can go online and you can test it out. There's this Brin, I've got on my phone, this Brin, which is a business coach. They call it a coach. They're advertising call. You can look it up. I think it's BRIN.com. Pocket Confidence. Some of us have had the privilege of having a run through that, which asks coach-like questions and then asks more questions and so on. So some of these things are not, to me, what I call deeply developed, but they are happening. Well, I've given you kind of a bit of an idea that there are things happening, and the big question is, how good will they become? What's the future hold? The pace of this is increasing, because artificial intelligence has been through some ups and downs in the last 20 years or so, where some people got very excited about it, and then other people poured scorn on it and said it was just smoke and mirrors, and it was just mumbo-jumbo, and the funding dropped off. And now we're into a phase where Google, Amazon, Facebook, and one other I'm trying to think of, are putting, Apple, of course, are putting huge amounts, billions of dollars into developing artificial intelligence as we speak. And so the researchers are having fun because they've got all this money now to take things further and to do more elaborate developments. We've got big data. You need a lot of data to make this stuff really impressive. We've got more computing power, so that all of these things are converging to create a kind of exponential growth and so we'll see more rapid development of a lot of these applications than we have seen in more recent years. Now, Thomas Leonard, so I'm going to talk about coaching now, and Thomas had something to say about this, and I'm hoping I can make that, and I hope you hear it, and if you don't hear it all, I can play it again. Can we just click on that little, there. Oh, and will this be broadcast or not? Can you play the sound? This was a teleconference, and they were talking about what is a coach. If you can't get it, I'll read it out. Can't play it? Okay. I can play it from my computer, that's all. But now I realise I've got the mic hooked up, maybe it won't play. I'll read it out what he said. And I can give you a link to it later. So what he said was, and I'd ask you to listen to this because this is pivotal for me in terms of how we look at all this artificial intelligence. And in the back of your mind, I want you to think, will a robot be able to do this? The professional coach is your partner in achieving business and personal goals, your champion during a turnaround, your trainer in communication and life skills, your sounding board when making choices, your motivation when strong actions are called for, your unconditional support when you take a hit, your mentor in personal development, your co-designer in creating extraordinary projects, your beacon during stormy times, your wake-up call if you don't hear your own. And most importantly, your professional coach is your partner in all that matters to you most. Now, as Krishna was saying, it's a high calling. And I think that sets a high bar for anybody who likes it. One of the things that attracted me to being a coach, when I heard Thomas, I watched him do a presentation in Sydney many years ago, and work over a weekend working with people. And I thought, I can do that. Not as well as he can, but I can do it and I can keep growing. And I've told a couple of you this story. I can keep growing. There is no point at which I can say, I've got it all. I'm the perfect coach, you know. I don't need to learn anything. So that, if you sort of there is a slide with all that on it, by the way, if you want it later. And I'm putting this slide deck up on SlideShare, so you'll be able to download it, so you don't have to take notes if you don't want to. So this is the counterpoise to the rapid development of the artificial intelligence. And I will now say, I've kind of jumped to my end in a way. I don't think in our lifetime we're going to be able to create a robot that's as good as Thomas Leonard was as a coach. I say that without any fear of sensible contradiction. So we'll go on, keep going. I don't want to go over time too much, but I'll speed up a bit. I'm going to just come down here a bit so I can see what I'm saying. What's it all mean for coaches? That's a good question. So I think there are three areas that I'd like you to think about and talk about. The first is you as a coach dealing with a client or a group of clients or a whole a government department or whatever it happens to be, a company, and what does this mean for that process, that engagement? The second is what does it mean for your business as a coach? If you're a professional coach and you've got a practice, what does it mean to how you build that, how you sustain it? You know, the sustainability and continuity of business is important for us as coaches, because if we're not getting paid, we can't go on being coaches unless we're just doing it pro bono and someone, coaching process, your coaching business, and the third is what does it mean for your clients? So coach, what does it mean for the coach? So what it means for a coach is, and this is my view, that the world is changing. If we want to be still successful as coaches in years to come, we need to adapt. We need to keep learning, and there probably won't be an end to it. And I would say one of the things I would be doing, if I were in your position, is thinking about other people you can collaborate. I've got a kind of engagement with technical people where I live, and I go along to their meetings, and most of it goes over my head, but I get these gems and I can have these conversations, and because I'm interested in what they're doing, they're willing to share with me the technical stuff in my layman's language. So think about that. Is that a possibility that you could hook up with those people? And also collaborate with other coaches, maybe form a group of coaches, whether locally or virtually, that you can share information, because I don't think any one of us is going to be able to grasp all this. So I'd say use the technology to enhance the process, use it to add value, be adaptable, be valued and trusted for your human qualities, and be valued and trusted for your superior coaching, because keep ahead of the game, in other words, keep ahead of the robots. So if somebody says, I've got this thing called Pocket Confidant in my phone, and it's terrific, I will say, okay, we'll give you a contest. You let me coach you for a month and the robot coach you for a month, and you tell me which suits you better. So you've got to have a bit of courage to do that and be on your game. Does that make sense? Okay. Business is being affected by technology. We know this. So drones, Amazon's using drones to deliver parcels. In Australia, we've got our National Postal Service, and they are experimenting with drones, and we've got huge distances. Anybody who studied geography or been there will know, with people on remote properties and so on. So they're using drones to deliver parcels and letters and so on in outlying suburbs of big cities, and rather than having all the little motorbikes running around with people delivering those, and also in as we call the bush, in outer areas. So so that's a business that's being impacted. People don't write letters so much anymore, so they're losing business to freight companies. Amazon is really taking over in so many areas, in retail, for instance. So how is it affecting your coaching business? And how will it affect your coaching business? Because every industry is being affected, and I think we need to ask ourselves, what parts of my business can be automated? Do you do your own bookkeeping? Do you have things about catching up with people, keeping records and so on? Can they be automated? I know that it's always been possible to do some of that, but you can do more of it now. Are there ways in which you can use artificial? For instance, if you took something like that Brin application, which is free to use at the moment, by the way, or another one which I've got in my phone, which is a translation service, and it was I'll tell you the story, because there's this Australian guy, he's a plumber. He's not a technical, like a IT guy, he's a plumber. And he was in China, and I think he was in Shanghai, and his passport got stolen. So he didn't know what to do, so he thought he'd better find the Australian... Am I speaking too quickly? Okay. And the accent's not too bad, I hope. Some people say, I didn't understand a word you said, because I was talking Australian. Yeah. So he's in Shanghai, and he loses his passport, and he goes up to the policeman. And he thinks he says, "Hello, how are you?" being a polite plumber from Australia. But what he really says, because his translations book wasn't very accurate, what he really says is, "I love you." At which the cop pulls a gun on him. And he thinks there has to be a better way. So he goes home and he puts $100,000 of his own money into developing a translation service, which is now in 34 or 37 languages. And if I was speaking, I don't know if it's got Maldive in it, but it's got a lot of other things. And I could probably have a conversation with Bibi where I said something, she said something in Norwegian, and I could get a translation, voice to voice, voice to text to text, etc. through that one experience and that one guy. So this is where the technology is with artificial intelligence. So I could use that. For instance, I could say, as that develops further, I could expand my practice, and I could maybe get a Spanish-speaking client in Mexico who was happy to work with that. It's a 5-second delay. Google's got a 3-second delay. Maybe we get it down to 1-second delay, and it could be the client might say, well, you know, I've heard this is a good coach, and I'll hire him instead of Pepe. No, they're not going to say that. But that's fantasy. But you see what I'm saying? There are ways in which we can use automation, ways in which we use artificial intelligence to improve our coaching practice and provide a better service. And the big question, what are your competitors doing? Now, if you're competing with the big four, I tell you, they are putting huge amounts of money. Ernst & Young and all those big companies that do coaching as well, executive coaching as well as accounting and stuff, they are putting big money into developing artificial intelligence. Ben Croft can tell you about people who are putting huge amounts of money into developing artificial intelligence. It's going to impact coaching in a big way. You'll tell people later, won't you, Ben? Yeah, maybe. He's got some great stories. So there are other people here who've got some good stories about that. So what are your competitors doing? That's a learning process. But it's not just in industry, it's not just in transport, it's not just in manufacturing, it's not just in postal deliveries and so on. It's affecting industries everywhere. And your clients are everywhere. So they're in government, they're in... So how is artificial intelligence affecting a company, being used by companies that may be being hired by government agencies, which you've had good access to up till now, and they come along and they say, look, those people you've been getting coached by are good, but we've got all this other super tech we've got big data and we've got augmented reality we can use for training and so on. So, your clients are all hearing this stuff, and they might be saying, well, it's been nice working with Des for a while, but, he's just one guy and these people have got all this super technology. Because every client you've got, if not affected now by artificial intelligence, is going to be affected by it, and deep learning and so on. So nearly half of all retail jobs could be lost by automation within 10 years. The manufacturing we know is affected. What I found quite interesting was this news item from Oxford, a college at Oxford University said the impact of automation on developing countries could lead to putting 85% of jobs at risk. To me, that would be terrifying, if I was responsible for employment policy and so on. So your clients may be starting to feel the pain. If you've got business owners, heads of government departments, whatever, starting to feel that life is closing in on them, that what seemed like a really good gig that they had running this company is a threat. So they're lying awake at night. They're not worrying about whether staff are going to leave. They're going to worry about whether they've even got a company anymore or they're an industry anymore. Does that make sense? That's a big responsibility for us as coaches to be aware of that. So what's your human edge? And this is really where I'm going to start wrapping it up, because I personally believe we've got the capacity to have an edge. One of my advisors, a guy named Ross Dawson, who's a big futurist, said in a conversation I had with him the other day, he thinks the biggest advantage we have as coaches is the capacity to inspire. And he basically said, within our lifetimes at least, and he thinks longer, any client who's halfway intelligent is not going to be able to be as inspired by a robot as they are by one of you. So inspiration, influence, we can have influence, we can tell stories. Of course robots can be taught to tell stories. Of course algorithms can teach themselves to tell stories. Also there has to be a beginning and a middle and an end, there has to be a joke, and there has to, but kids start telling one another stories. Go into a playground, the kids are telling stories to one another all the time. They didn't have to get trained by an algorithm. So we learn storytelling. We hear stories from our parents, we hear stories from work colleagues, we hear stories from friends. That's something we have as a kind of inbuilt capacity over centuries and millennia. People sit around. I think one of the good things when my grandfather and his family had that farm in the country where they didn't have electricity, it was great sitting around at night listening to people talking, telling stories. You go there now, it's a suburb now, and you'd watch people sitting around a table and they're all looking at their phone, having dinner, looking at the phone, right? So things have changed. We have storytelling. We have creativity. And we had the wonderful welcome this morning from the dancers. Just brought together a whole lot of skills, right? And we have expertise in relationships and in conceptualizing. So a whole lot of things. Think about that, talk about that over the next couple of days, and trust building. I personally don't see a day when I'm going to trust a robot more than I trust another human being. You might have different views. And there are some human beings I wouldn't trust, but some human beings I would trust. I wouldn't trust as much as I'd trust a robot. That's another story. So that's your human edge. Time of change. And here are some tips. Someone said, are you going to give people 10 tips? A little mastermind group I've got. You're going to give people 10 tips? I thought, 10 tips. Oh, I hate doing these lists. It's not my forte. So I did a list, and if it's not good enough for you, make a better list. Do a SWOT analysis on your own business. We neglect that. We're really good at telling our clients, aren't we? I think you should do a SWOT analysis. When was the last time we did one for ourselves? I'm going to come down here so I know what I'm saying. Commit to ongoing learning, I've already said that. Consider your clients, I've already said that. Join or start a group, I've already said that. Think collaboration. Think about, you've got a group of people here, and I've had some wonderful conversations just since last night with lots of people. So there's a lot of intellectual and emotional strength in this room. A lot of great human qualities. Think about whether maybe through IAC or in other subgroups or whatever, there's room for more collaboration. hire a coach who gets it. Coaches should have coaches. And I'm just going to leave that hanging there. I think I'm one who's kind of getting it, but there'll be other people who maybe are more advanced, and you could think about whether you'd like to get them as coach. Maybe not today, but have that as a bit of a plan. And practice coaching masteries. You know, if you read through those masteries, they are the answer to will the robots beat me? That's my belief. And, you know, because those masteries were developed by a group of us over a couple of years, and these long telephone calls. I've told a couple of people this story, so just forgive me if you've already heard it. But we'd have these long phone calls. We didn't have Facebook at the time, and we'd have these long phone calls, and we were trying to get this cultural sensitivity so that the masteries would work in Colombo as well as they worked in Dallas, Texas, or in Ontario, or in Sydney, Australia. And we'd have these long discussions about words and phrases and how will that work out, you know. And then people would say something, someone would say something really profound or enlightening, and then there'd be this silence. And eventually someone would say, is anyone there? So it was a great process. So practice the masteries, and finally go within. And this is where I kind of bounce to Debdas tomorrow. One of the things I really loved going through the program for this conference was, really, congratulations, everybody who developed it, because it all hangs together. And what Debdas is going to say tomorrow is absolutely crucial to understanding the role of coaching in the cyber-physical world. I don't know what he's going to say, except like a one-liner he's given me, and it's good stuff. Back in the Latin scholars among you will know that those words down the bottom say, hic sunt dracones, here be dragons, or if I was a pirate, I'd say, here be dragons. So that was the Lennox globe, it's called. There were people sometimes say that old maps used to say there'd be dragons, where they didn't know what was there. And they're probably talking about our part of the world, Southeast Asia, Oceania, Australia. But they're really saying, we don't know what's there. And what some people are thinking now, that what's there in terms of artificial intelligence and augmented reality is dragons. They're thinking of, you know, Terminator 2. You know, like I like to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator 2. When people talk about my age, I say, I might be old, but I'm not obsolete. You know? You know, they're thinking Terminator 2, the machines again. Elon Musk, who's developed the Tesla automotive car, is one of the richest men in the world. I think one of the 100 richest men in the world, and the SpaceX thing that's going to fly people to Mars. He says we won't actually realise how threatening artificial intelligence is until the robots are walking down the street killing people. So there is a dark side to this, and one of the things I think is missing, and I don't just me that thinks this, but some people who are very deeply involved in these conversations think this, that the human issues and the social economic issues of this rapid development of artificial intelligence have been left too much to the technologists. And, you know, that just developing the technology, there's a woman who's from Australia but who's a heavy hitter in Silicon Valley. She's a vice president of Intel. She has started an institution with some other big names in Australia at the Australian National University to look at all these human issues, the social issues, and to bring together people from other disciplines, not just the information technology people, and to say, you know, what's the future like, and are people considering ethical issues? An automotive car is you've probably heard this one. Self-driving car, autonomous vehicle, approaching an intersection. Some children are walking across. The car's been trained to protect its human non-driver passenger. What will it do? Will it swerve off the road and risk killing the driver? Well, it might calculate that airbags will save him or her, or will it keep going and kill the kids? Or, you know, there's a version of this called the trolley argument. People who know about kind of ethical discussions will know about that. So there are these big ethical issues in terms of what we're talking about. Here be dragons. People were, and I know there's a kind of dark side to all of that, which is the colonial era, but looking at that just as a symbol of where we sometimes don't know what's coming, and some people are apprehensive and some people are excited. So I'm kind of in the middle, you know. I'm excited, but I'm also wondering, have we thought enough about the ethical and other social issues? So I welcome you to keep in touch, and there's all the connections, and just Google me. There's not a lot of people with my name out there. So there are all the connections. And that's Thomas's thing that I've got on the slides. And these are acknowledgements of people who've helped me prepare this. And that's my motto, be better than a robot. Thank you.